seek, above all, for a game worth playing. Oh baby, it's witchcraft contagious. I felt it for ages. We're out of these cages in this house of mages. It's witchcraft, it's dangerous. Beware of these pages. There's spells of all flavors in this house of mages. In this house of mages. In this house of mages.
Hello and welcome. My name is Daniel Cumming and welcome to Make Yoga Magic Again, the House of Mages podcast. In this episode, I chat to my good friend and co-teacher of the Ritual Embodiment Yoga Teacher Training Program, the official yoga teacher training program of the House of Mages, Nicole Cargakis. I originally met Nicole back when we were both teaching at the same yoga studio here on the Sunshine Coast. I love the way that Nicole weaves concepts, philosophy, and that perfect mix of playfulness into her classes. It actually took us a little while though to start hanging out outside of the yoga class. At one point, we started bumping into each other randomly all the time, all over the Sunshine Coast. So we decided to give in and actually have a proper catch up intentionally. Once we did catch up, we knew exactly why the universe was trying to get us to hang out. And for the last few years, we've been collaborating, having all kinds of weird, wonderful, and epic conversations. Nicole has been a friend in every sense of the word and such an inspiration to not just me, but so much of the community here on the Sunshine Coast. Anyone who knows her would most definitely agree what an epic and amazing human she is. So without further ado, I am so excited and honored to interview Nicole Cargakis. All right. Welcome everyone to the House of Mages podcast, and a very, very warm welcome to my very special guest, Nicole Cargakis.
Hi. Hi.
So Nicole and I have the last couple of days been filming content for the Ritual Embodiment Yoga Teacher Training Program, and we thought, why not do a podcast as part of that?
Yeah, awesome.
So I guess I'd like to start with, how you got into yoga and Tantra, and did it start at an early age? Was there a noticeable spark somewhere, or how did you kind of get into it?
We were kind of talking about it yesterday when we had lunch in between filming. There was this, I can talk about the start of yoga itself, like when I went to my first yoga class and how that started, but I feel like there was something much, much earlier, which is begging my parents to let me go to Sunday school and then reading every single book that I could get my hands on NDEs, on near-death experiences. And then sort of being really involved in my friends, my friend who was part of a group of Christian mystics, and just being wanting to ask questions, and just from a really young age spending a lot of time with my dad, wanting to know more, and kind of almost never being satisfied with the answer to questions as well. It's just but there was some deeper understanding that was never quite being touched. And I can kind of really see this thread from a very young age. I'm saying, when I speak to all this, I'm talking 7 or 8 years old. Yeah, so I devoured books. There is just my mum has got in her box of photos, countless photos of me asleep that they thought was funny taking, where I've dropped the book on my face, falling asleep mid-reading.
Yeah.
This thirst for story and human experience and what it's all about. So that started really young. Plus, I was a dancer from 4 to 17.
Yeah.
So classical and contemporary. So always moving my body and sort of responding to that, and an athlete. And so they're two really common threads through my whole entire childhood. And then there's that, like, I went through that weird time that I know a lot of people go through after high school where I was like really confused about what was next, you know, like, so I was like studying psychology and philosophy at uni for a while, and art history, that really interested me, but that wasn't answering something. And so then I just started working, and then at about, I think it was 21, I went to my first yoga class, which was just at the City Baths in Melbourne. It was just like I was married at 21. My husband was going for a swim, and I was like, oh, I want to do something while he's swimming at the City Baths. So I've heard of yoga. And so this would be if I'm 21, this is in 95.
Yeah.
So I've gone to this yoga class, and sort of in this like very well lit room in this gym, and I really enjoyed it. It had been a couple of years since I'd been dancing, so I just like really loved moving my body. And then the teacher at the end went, do you want to come to a real yoga class? And I was just like, oh, like being invited into something secret. And I'm like, sure. And he goes, come on Saturday morning. And it was in Williamstown, and it was a Mysore Ashtanga practice.
So what was the style of the class that you went to? That one?
I would say it was probably Hatha.
Yeah.
Like, funny thing is, I don't have a lot of recollection of the practice itself.
Yeah.
I have a lot of recollection of the room and the teacher. Like, I can see this man, I can't remember his name all these years later, but I can see his face, I can see the walls and how well lit it was. And I can just remember like going, oh, it feels good to be back in my body. Nothing was majorly sparked, except for at the end when he said, come to this thing. And that really sparked something. And then I went to this Mysore Ashtanga practice. And this was in this room in Williamstown. And it was super dark, just like, you know, a lamp, some candles. It was like mat to mat. And so with Mysore Ashtanga, it's not a led practice at all. So I'd never heard of it. I had no idea. They were practicing primary series, Ujjayi breathing. I'd never heard Ujjayi breathing. So there's this whole room of people moving with like one person kind of yelling in Sanskrit, just counting the breaths. That's all they really were doing, not saying the names of the poses. Like, and Ujjayi breathing in this dark room with heaters on. It was Melbourne winter.
Yeah.
And the guy who had taught me in the previous class was assisting. So he just kept on coming up to me and like helping me. And I was like, I felt like I was playing catch up the whole time. But because I danced and done sport my whole life, I had a lot of like just body connection. So I was kind of keeping up pretty good.
Wow. Yeah.
But I felt like I'd been initiated into something very outside of anything that I knew. And that's how I felt in that room. I was just like, what have I come to? And although there was something that was, you know, so new in it, it was also really familiar, and it's something I've never forgotten. It was just like, like relief. Like, just like, I don't know what we're doing in here actually, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have to do this again.
And were they talking much philosophy in the class?
No, nothing. Like just Mysore, just counting in Sanskrit the 5 breaths for every pose.
Yeah.
They're not even saying the names of the poses. And then afterwards they're like, do you want to come to a cafe with us? And I'm like, sure. Again, like this is in 95. And they're like, oh, we're all getting chai. I'm like, what's this thing called chai? Like it just felt like I was being, initiated into this whole new world. And they were all quite a bit older than me as well. And so then he was like, the guy who had like invited me there, he's like, what did you think? And I'm like, this is everything. And so I kept on going back. But then it was quite a long distance from my house. And I'm like, the call came to like find something closer so I could do it more than just once a week. And so I tried a few things, and then I found this woman, Jane. So I must have found her soon after, like within a month. Yeah. And she was my yoga teacher from 21 to 27. Yep. And so she fascinated me. She just was deep philosophy. She wove in other themes of her life. Like this, she just felt like wild and embodied and intelligent. And yeah, she was my teacher. I would say that it was Hatha Vinyasa. She definitely consistently connected to themes, philosophy, energetics, the breath, like it was, and again, it was a much older group of people. Like back then, yoga in Melbourne wasn't this big sort of scene for young people. So they were like, I was like in my early 20s, but the majority of the class would have been women in their mid 30s.
Yeah.
And like I loved that. I just felt like I was just being really held and supported by a community. And like I ended up having my first baby just before I turned 27, but like I felt like Jane, so I practiced yoga through my whole pregnancy, and I felt like Jane was she was a mother, young mother as well, and she just really held me in that. And so that's 95, and where are we now? 2021. Yeah. So that's my 26 years, and in that time I have gone everywhere in my practice. I've like moved away from my practice completely. I've become, at the darkest periods of my life, completely obsessed with the physical in the practice. I can see that for me, there has been like I can recognize that. Like where just this, like, just to push my body is like what I felt that I needed. I've explored so many teachers, different lineages. But for me in the last, I did my teacher training, what is it? My daughter is 12. I did my teacher training like 11 years ago. And I've been teaching really, really consistently ever since. Yeah. And in that time, my strong pull to share philosophy in class and to keep exploring that as a student of yoga has just got stronger and stronger and stronger. Rather than moving away from it, I've just like gone deeper and deeper and deeper into that. And I would say like a stronger connection, although a lot of my teachers have like been teachers in the tantric lineage, my personal connection to that has been much stronger in the last 5 or 6 years. Like my personal call to that was ignited maybe about 6 years ago, and is just like...
Was there like a pivotal moment where you found a book or a teacher, or you went to some class? Or
So I can recognize that Sally Kempton, meditation teacher, big influence in that. I remember listening to a podcast of Christopher Harish Wallace maybe about 6 years ago, and I just listened to him and just went, and Christopher Tompkins, who's also more like in the academic, as opposed to Christopher Tompkins doesn't so much teach the Tantric Hatha practices, he's more a scholar. And I listened to both those men at the exact same time. And again, like it's so like I'm so visual with like where I was, and I could picture where I was here on the Sunshine Coast, and like listening to these men speak and just like going, this is the heart of yoga. But more than that, this is the heart of the questions that I've been asking myself since I was a little girl. And I'm not going to say to you, I found the answers, because I'm still like...
But you found the people that ask the same questions that you do.
No, that's it. I found the people who ask the same questions, and I found these incredible, beautiful, tangible practices that keep leading me to an embodied experience of some of the answers, of some of those anchors. And I felt them in my body, and I've been shown, and I didn't really understand until the last few years what it means to be held within a lineage for me. Not to say that I'm not still got my own creative flair and that I don't weave in other things within my own teaching, and that's for sure. But there is something for me that just being held by this lineage, that it's got like this this history of empirical knowledge. It's been tried, and there's been experience, and people have touched things, and then they transmit this as the next teacher. Like it took a while for me, maybe because I did flip around teachers a lot, and maybe because also I've got a curious spirit. And I have to like try everything.
But it's good, because I think a lot of these teachers that I've found like that are in that like kind of classical tantric lineage, a lot of them have this kind of attitude that no one really knows or is ever going to know, but like the fun is the seeking. And I think like both you and me have that similar idea that like I feel like if anyone said that they have the answers, then I wouldn't I'd probably be averse to actually, going and practicing that, with that teacher, because
definitely.
I think the people who I really respect and who I've seen do the work and grow, and I've read their books and all that sort of stuff, they might be 70, 80 years old, and they're like, I still have no idea.
Absolutely.
And the more older I get and the more I delve into it, the more I realize I have no idea, but I still enjoy the seeking and the evolution and the growing within that. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, the older I get, the more comfortable, more willing to be in the uncertainty I get as well. And I kind of see that through all the wisdom teachings. And even just to say, yesterday when we did a lot of the filming, I came home last night and felt like we're doing a review of my history in yoga. I just came home last night in just the deepest gratitude for my teachers. Some of the ones that I've had in person over the years, the ones that I haven't been able to meet in person, but what they've transmitted, online through their books, through listening to podcasts, through doing, even doing studies with people who've studied with them. So sort of secondhand knowledge through has been, I was sat in really deep gratitude last night. I've been lucky to have really incredible teachers. Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as well, good teachers, in saying that, when I say they have no idea, they still have ideas, but I guess they don't force those ideas on people. Rather than saying, I think it's this, they say, well, this is a really efficient way of delving into your questions in a practical way. Because sometimes we get really heady about the cosmos, and that's what I really like about Tantra and just, I guess, yoga in general, is being able to use the whole spectrum of experience to delve into these questions instead of just getting stuck in your head and going around in circles and going, how are you ever going to know? It's that kind of experiential process of it. And other people want, who have, made similar maps and, share their experiences, fellow kind of journeys.
Yeah. And that the all-inclusive nature of Tantra, this incredible, sort of balanced approach of, transcendent and immanent, of in the flesh and in the unseen, that invitation of the all is for me, everything. It's absolutely everything. It just means, wow, I get to just be here with my deepest questions that may never be answered. And I get to be here with my human stuff. And this is all welcome in this particular teaching and approach and map, and all of that is in the map as well. And so it's I was saying it yesterday, Tantra has this goal and this aim. It has something that you're moving towards and it can't be lost, but everything else is equally as important. The aim isn't just the end point, the aim or the goal of some kind of, touching some divinity is about recognizing it everywhere. And for me, that's really soothing. It is. It's really compassionate. And it means that I get to be here now and always have something to come back to. And it's really beautiful. I feel really privileged to continue to be a student of it, but also to start to share my piece of it with others.
Yeah.
Which I love. I love teaching.
Oh, it's been so much fun, yesterday, just filming and seeing all that. Yeah, we touched on some really good points, the four aims of yoga and Tantra. But I guess a question, so we don't retread the same stuff as we were talking about yesterday in the filming on the course, but if someone you really care about was kind of just getting into yoga and they were struggling with it, but yet you knew that they would get so much benefit out of it, especially the type of person they are, and they said, but why? Why would I spend effort practicing this? And especially if you said that who was the teacher, or where did you read or hear it mentioned that to delve fully into the whole spectrum of Tantra, it would be 30 lifetimes or so?
So he said 32 lifetimes, but this also rests on the fact that every new lifetime you'd have to be able to recall all your other lifetimes so that you could continue on from that point in your learning. So like it is a deep you know, like I don't want to even just limit to rabbit hole. It's just everybody's brought their piece to it, from like, you know, from whatever predates Tantra to classical Tantra to kind of moving into the real sort of Tantric Hatha to kind of moving forward from there. Like there's a lot of different practices and a lot of different approaches. For me, I've got to like catch myself and go, I don't need to try and learn those 32 lifetimes or not feel ready to share it because I don't have those 32 lifetimes of knowledge inside of me. Yeah. It's consistency of connecting to the practice for me. So if I was going to share to someone about the why, like why continue on? It's an awesome question. I think that we're here, you know, we're here in this relationship to life, like with our inner world and with each other and with the world around us. And I think that like it's no just like, you know, bizarre circumstance. It's absolute perfection that we're here. I see life as this like incredible hero's journey of recovering the gold that's within that can get lost in, you know, in life experiences and sort of, you know, collective conditioning and how we attach to things and these wisdom traditions. I mean, not just Tantra, not just yoga, but Buddhism's been like an incredible anchor at different times in my life. But these ancient wisdom traditions just help us so much to understand and navigate the bigger questions of not just why we're here, but how to be here, how to relate to our human experiences. And I think the greatest thing that we could do is to know ourselves. Yeah. So that for me, that would be, seems like a simple answer, but it's just like, keep uncovering yourself, keep on uncovering what feels true to you in your creativity and true to you in your expression and true to you in your energy levels and true to you in how you want to relate to other, you know, because there's a lot of things being modeled around us and I'm not even going to label them as good or bad, but they're not us. Yeah. And I think part of the journey is to discover that. Yeah. And like for me, that is like, I love teaching yoga and studying yoga, but it's not the only thing that I study and that I do. And it's not the only thing that I work with. Overall, if you were going to ask me what my greatest, like what is like the most interesting thing to you in life, it's this. And so there's lots of different models that I use to keep uncovering this. I mean, if you saw my bookshelves, they're all really about understanding what it means to be a human, to interrelate, to know about your stuff, to free yourself to express it, to feel safe when you're not ready. Like it's all about this human experience. And yoga is such an incredibly grounding, especially tantric practices, like ground into the being of yourself. Understand that that's, you know, that's what all of us around it, you know, that we're all having that same experience and it's all described in there. So yeah, I'd be saying to anyone, get to know yourself.
I think that's like more important now than ever because like we're exposed to so much and like marketed to, but even just from our friends and family and people we follow on social media, we're just bombarded with not only things that seem like we should be enjoying them or doing them, but like the perfect versions, which are often not the full expressions of them. So it's really confusing. And I guess, we're trying all these things and we think that we should be enjoying them or we should be doing this or we should be doing that. But it's not making us happy. And then we're getting confused because we don't really get told how to delve into that really, like into ourselves or find what that even means to find aspects of ourselves that we really love. And
and Tantra Hatha is systematic with that. It's not just philosophy, it's systematic with that. Like it's like, you know, you meet the body, you work with the breath, you sort of, you know, you consider all these layers of self, you know, they're like, you know, collective conditioning is in there, like all this stuff, I guess, that has this, I want to say more like sort of modern lens and language. This is all in the tantric teachings. Like it's all in there, this understanding of intergenerational trauma, of like life's experiences, of feeling like resistant and blocked to live from purpose. This is all in Tantra. All this stuff that like life coaches are working with now. This is all in there with a very, very systematic, loving approach to being able to kind of work with that, and not just work with it cognitively, not to just like sit there and talk to someone, but to drop into this memory bank of every single experience that's held in the body, to like feel sensation, to know, to spend time with yourself in very guided and held ways. It's like, yeah, really incredible.
Yeah, and to share that in your unique way, because that's what we were talking about yesterday, a bit of theming advice for the teacher training and how to really bring that unique part of yourself through into the practice and the experience, like that saying, bring everything to the path.
Yeah.
I really love that because, I feel like initially when I was getting into yoga or a lot of practices, I had to exclude different parts of myself, but it just feels all-inclusive. And and I really see it in teachers and feel it in teachers that I go to a class and it's not just this copy-paste, we should be doing this sequence. It's weaving their unique things, and whether they're talking about astrology or even just a podcast that they listened to the other day. I remember going to your classes early on and you talking about podcasts and TED Talks and this and that and weaving everything in and making it part of the practice. And I'm really interested I don't think I've ever asked you, like, what was your experience with the first class you taught? Like, do you remember what it was about? Did you do a big discourse at the start, or did it go well?
So I finished my teacher training, like we had like this ceremony, like you're certified and all of this on a Sunday.
Yeah. And
my first class was Monday night, 9 a.m. for the same studio that I did my teacher training for. So it was like, but I've been teaching through my whole teacher training to some friends and some different things as well. So I felt very keen and ready. I was very nervous about lefts and rights and mirroring. I remember that. Like, that seemed like I can be like that person that can say to anyone else, nobody cares if you make a mistake. I care a lot if I make a mistake. So it's funny. I've, bit of pressure for perfection there. So I could feel that. It was very, very foundational. Even though I had a very kind of, like not just strong physical practice, but I also had, for a new teacher, quite a deep understanding already of, more creative sequencing and things like that. I was more interested in teaching a foundational class well than making it hard for myself. What I remember is this very clearly is that it's like, wow, there's a lot you have to say, in the short time that anyone's in a pose to help to anchor them in.
Yeah. And
I could feel how like, it's like they were new cogs, I guess, like not well oiled yet, or that pathway. So it was a bit like, just like, oh, then you have to say this. And then like really quickly, especially in a foundational class, how smooth and quick that stuff gets. So I've been the person since then in the last 11 years with new teachers and doing some mentoring and things like that, to be that first person to go, just go there, bring yourself, keep it simple, and you don't have to say everything. As well, like keep it real. So, but themes started quickly with me. So I say that. So I don't remember if my first class did, but I would say within my first month of teaching, I was like, no, it's not enough to just turn up and go, sit down and breathe. I needed to give them some contextual contemplation points for the practice. I knew that straight away. I'm just like, this is not a fitness class. This is not exercise. Like, this is incredible for the body, and the body is not discarded in, the tantric lineage. This is what I'm moving through life with. And, I like to have, I don't put the pressure I did on the past, but I like to have a vital, clear body to, get out of bed and go for a walk and move, and every day's different. But for me, I was very driven in bringing philosophy in very quickly. Oh, I'm going to be really honest here. It hasn't always gone down well. Yeah, this is a place that it hasn't. In my history of 10 years, there's been feedback.
Yeah.
That from people going, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in philosophy. I've had it from students. I've had concern in studios that I've worked for. Concern come back at me like, I don't know if people want to hear the philosophy. Just teach a good, strong practice.
And it's interesting you said it's not a fitness class, because that's the thing, because I taught fitness classes for years before I taught yoga, and at the end of each one we do some stretching, some yoga-based yin stretching. And I've always been, we chatted about since I was a kid, I was always interested in philosophy and the mind, and I'd drop in little things and be really excited about it, and they'd either glaze over in the eyes, or some of them would come up to me after and be like, oh, it was a really good class, but I don't know what you were talking about, that was a little bit weird, or same feedback. And so when I started teaching yoga, it was really nice to be able to weave it in, but there was so much resistance to it, because some studios are like a fitness studio, essentially.
And it's not about me sitting here and denigrating that kind of aspect of yoga right now, although that's another whole discussion that's really interesting and I'm interested in. But all I know is this, is that every time I got the pushback from either the space that I was teaching or particular students in there, I never, ever, ever, ever felt okay about dropping it. It was like I never came home and just went, look, at the end of the day, I'm here to give them what they want. Not once, actually. All it did is confirm and affirm how important it is for me that I keep weaving philosophy in. Even if it means that at the beginning of the class, I have to sit there for 7 whole minutes and listen to me delve into a theme and how we're going to explore it and give it the practice, the why, and then the what. So here's what we're going to explore, and I'm going to give you so much information that I'm going to empower you to understand why this practice leads you to that. I'm so about really making people feel like they understand the why in their practice. And if that takes us 7 whole minutes out of a 75-minute class, I think I'm okay with that. That 7 minutes less of standing poses. And I keep saying 7 minutes. Sometimes it's 5 or 10, and then weaving it through the whole way through as well, obviously, as well. But I've got no problem with just talking at the beginning in discourse. And I love that. It's...
But the thing is, you never know what impact it's making or even going to make, because... I've had students that, I've done classes where I've thought I've spoken well about a concept or philosophy and had no feedback or anything. It's like crickets. But then years later, I'll just have a message from one of my students on Facebook and be like, hey, you probably don't remember me, but I was in this class and you said this, and it just really landed and helped me through this family situation, or it helped me to pack up and leave this job. Or even to the fact that they said, at first when you said it, I thought it was weird and I didn't understand it. But something's happened recently and I've been going through this and it finally clicked. That one little thing that at that time, they didn't consciously absorb it, but their subconscious held onto it. And it's I might need that later. And then when the situation came up, they needed it. They had that tool. So
yeah, absolutely. Oh, and look, I spoke to the pushback that I've got. Outside of that, I've got mainly incredible feedback about your classes are different. They've got deep meaning. They mean something. I learn in them, and that's kept me super passionate to just keep on moving in that direction, to the point now that although my themes are still creative and not necessarily worded exactly, in the kind of the tenets of tantric philosophy, they've still definitely got my own flair. Philosophy and quite a classical traditional approach to teaching is stronger ever right now than it's ever been. And keeping some purity to the practice for me, and I'm not saying that that's the way it has to be, but that's my way at the moment. So I've because I used to weave in all kinds of free movement and functional movement and all good. But at the moment, and for the last maybe about year and a half, 2 years, it's been pretty classical Hatha practices. And I'm enjoying that. Yeah, I'm enjoying that in my own practice, and I'm enjoying teaching with the system at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I believe, like, you really need to separate from something in order to get a clear perspective on it and, like, evolve with that. And I've gone through a similar thing where I've gone through, like, basic foundations to, like, trying to get over creative with my sequencing and just trying to, like, be like, I'm going to do the weirdest, like, most creative thing that no one's ever done in the class before.
I've been there.
To the point where I just didn't want to do asana at all, that I was just wanting to do breath work and meditation. To now coming back to, like, just getting back to the bare basics again and just being like, wow, these are just brand new poses. Yet they're the ones that I started with, and just really enjoying them, just holding long poses and, I guess more Hatha practice.
And, like, what I love about, you know, everything within Tantra is, like, it's not about hierarchy, although they may use the words, like, more fundamental, but that doesn't kind of, like, necessarily, like, it doesn't really matter, because, like, the nature of something that's at its most subtle and fundamental, like, its nature is to contract into something more dense. So you kind of can't say that there's a hierarchy, because its nature is to become something and dissolve. And I think, you know, I'm not going to speak for you, but I hear it in what you've just said, and I feel it in myself, is that there's been, like, this obsession with the poses and with the body layer of being. And then my practice has taken me way deeper into breath and meditation, but for me, especially pranayama, and all kinds of different ways that I've explored that. And so coming back to the asana now, it's so much less like, I don't need for me, the variety of the poses or whatever, because now what I'm doing in my asana is, like, really the energetics of the pose. So like, these shapes just become ways to really keep connecting with the things that within my pranayama practice and my meditation practices and my more subtle awareness practices. My asana practice is about that. So the simplicity within the more classical Hatha poses and the slowness in the pace of teaching now just offers that opportunity for, like, every single shape to be this, you know, incredible full-bodied, you know, mudra or gesture of, like, understanding energy in a new way within the body and consciousness in a new way within the body. And so, it's this, like, you know, going all the way, starting here and going all the way into the subtle, and then being able to feed that new understanding back through the layers again, and then we go back in, and you know, deeper subtle, and I think that's just part of the
and
flow.
I love that it starts with our asana, it starts in the physical, because, you know, we are physical beings, and a lot of people as well just, like, can't get the subtleties. Like, I couldn't. I needed to go out and, like, end up in a pool of sweat and every muscle just exhausted to get to that place. And if the class wasn't like that, then I get bored and blame it on the teacher, and, like, just all this stuff coming up and be like, why do they not know how to teach, like, a proper, like, strong yoga class? And I just didn't get it.
Awesome stuff to see. Like, that's what I mean about the knowing yourself. That's why I would say to someone, that's what you just learnt in that class, like what you just said. And then, like, the teacher was like this, and, like, my right leg couldn't stop shaking, and it was so annoying because, like, I couldn't do that pose I did last week. I'm like, that experience, perfect yoga class. You just saw a lot of your reactions of the mind, a lot of your, like, you know, blame outside of yourself, you know, to the teacher sequencing, whatever. You just witnessed your habitual patterns. You just got this awesome fixed 1 hour to get to know how you respond to life and how you respond to the world. Now look at that and go, where else do I do that? You know, I blame the teacher for the sequencing. Oh, do I blame my boss for this? You know, do I blame my mother for this? Interesting thread. So, like, it doesn't matter if you're going to it even for, like, I like the sweat and the strength and the stretch. If you've got a good teacher who at least says you're getting to know yourself, who at least even just points to that, if not even the deepest philosophy, then that's a perfect part of the path.
Because that's the key, right? Because otherwise you are just kind of projecting the blame, and, like, you might never get to that point where you start to actually, like, reflect on why you're experiencing this. So, like, is there... I guess that, if it was that easy to say, oh yeah, it's this, like everyone would be doing it. But like, is it just like when they're experiencing that, like just turning it back, or like using some sort of mirror, or just dropping that seed?
It's dropping the seed.
Yeah.
It's dropping the seed. And so when I've taught at places where there's resistance to philosophy, so I've taught yoga in like hardcore functional movement gyms. And when I have tried philosophy,
where they love Shavasana.
Yeah, and so when like I've dropped philosophy and I'm like, like the room's just like so uncomfortable, and the next week one person comes back. So I'm like, okay, how do I weave this in a more subtle way? And a lot of it is just teaching them a good, strong vinyasa class, but keep taking enough pauses to just saying, and now reflect on your state of mind. Reflect on the energy in your body. Reflect on like where your head was at during that sequence. Were you distracted? Were you frustrated? So just dropping seeds of self-reflection, and that's it.
Yeah.
And that's it. Not like leading them anywhere, contemplate this. This is all about, no. Just like, and now tune in. And now tune in. And really, that's more than a lot of us have ever taught to do. How are you feeling? And like, I love to do that. There's a lot of pauses in my practices where it's just like, this pause is like not, like people think like, child's pose in a yoga class is a rest. And I'm like, rest? No rest. Can you please pause and notice how you feel? What are the energetics in your body? What has changed? What layer of the self are you attuned to right now? Where is your head? Were you present for any of that? And it's okay if you weren't. Like, that's the whole thing. It doesn't matter if you weren't. And I'll share that as well. There's no right or wrong answers to this. This is about you knowing you. So that you can recognize your own patterns and go, is this pattern beneficial to my life? Yeah, it's awesome. Carry on. Or like, yeah, no, this one always gets me.
Yeah.
The consequence of this particular pattern is not always beneficial to my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love it. Like, that is, again, that like my teachers are very clear about that. There's not like this is bad or this is good. Like doing something for enjoyment or pleasure. It's not like, well, these are the bad things and these are the good things. It's like, are these beneficial to your own being in life? And also, let's not forget recognizing the needs of those around us, the collective, the planet, and all of these things. So just looking at, there are actually things that are more and less beneficial. It's not about good or bad.
Yeah.
But let's be real.
Yeah, because we are like, we look at everything dualistically, but then, I think the key for me anyway is to find like, look at it like the non-dualistic version of it, and then you can rearrange it to see how it could be good and bad in different situations. And
absolutely.
Like so, not always seeing it. And that's the thing as well, because we all put our own flavour on it. If we're talking about something, we're obviously putting our version of it out there, of whether we've had a good or bad experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how over the years my language around teaching has changed so much. It's like so permissive these days. I really don't want to lead people to believe that a particular breath practice is going to make them feel like a particular way.
Yeah.
And that was like a really big shift again around 6 or 7 years ago. I'm just like, I'm like telling people that back bends are energizing. Like, I'm telling them that they are. And I'm just like, I don't really want to do that. And so like I use the words like maybe, possibly after Kapalbhati you'll notice a shift in temperature. Possibly you'll notice a shift in your energetic state. So there's a lot of permissive language, so people have an opportunity for their own reflection, contemplation, and experience of what's happening. And I think I said it yesterday, to their own data collection. Every time I do this sequence, this pose, this teacher, this is what I notice about me, which might be different to the person on the mat next to me. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm interested to what you would consider, if you can pin it down, to like a pillar of what makes something a tantric practice, because it is very inclusive, but I guess it's not everything. So what actually is it? What is like some of the fundamental pillars or ideas or flavors that you would think that, like, whether it's a yoga practice or just the way that you approach life in general, like what would make it tantric?
Okay, so first I just think basically is like an acknowledgement, yes, an acknowledgement of the dual and non-dual nature of reality. Okay, that's my simple answer.
Yeah.
And what that means everywhere. What that means everywhere. And actually also, if you want to, I would say at this point that if you would want to like start to explore life through Tantra, it would require you to do tantric practices and not just contemplate and not just reflect and not just read and not just say I have a tantric approach because I accept the dual and non-dual nature of reality. I think that you would, I believe, in full honor of this wisdom tradition, that it requires doing the practices. And that is the asana, that is the breath practices, especially the breath meditations, the meditation. I mean, there's going to be people who are way more interested in one, like there'll be tantric yogis whose whole life is mantra. But there's a lot of, there's all these core practices. There is a systematic approach as well, but it also kind of like depends on like, in a way, like where you're starting as well and like when you're starting. But, my initial answer is actually my answer.
Yeah, so I guess like an acceptance that not everything has like one kind of label or one view of it, and in order to really experience that essence of it, you have to start to trace it back to what it is and kind of unpack it, and the willingness to do the exercises and like the practices to do that. Absolutely. So I guess like if I could use an example, kind of like anger. Everyone would think of anger as bad because if you've had someone that's, when they get angry, they're not a nice person to be around. So you think anger is really bad, but then you unpack it, say anger is energy, and it's I think a response from needing to make change and experiencing resistance to making that change, and then people just get frustrated. But then I guess it's just something is not right, like in your own inner world. I guess something is, something needs to change, or something you're not unhappy about the current situation that you're in.
Absolutely, like and that's anger's a great one, probably even more than like grief or a lot of the sort of stronger emotions we might experience, is because anger is very often expressed in very ways that hurt others. It often is in ways that are very reactive, that can be emotionally, physically violent, that can be expressed through projection without first reflection on where they're coming from. Anger's also a very heavily suppressed one. It's like a negative, so it gets labeled this negative emotion. Yeah. But really it is a like you said, it is a sign for us to ask more questions. Has my boundaries been crossed by another? Have I allowed my boundaries to be crossed? It's not always us allowing our boundaries to be crossed, because people do bad things to other people. So, do I, and I've seen the word sacred rage shared around a lot lately, trying to kind of maybe like just shift the lens, like, so I think it comes back to something that we said before as well, is that like there is obviously this very dual nature within every contraction of energy, through emotions and behaviors or whatever. But we can really start to look at a lot of our human experiences as like, again, it's like, is this a beneficial expression of anger? How can I, what is the most beneficial way for me to move with this energy? Is it to run? Is it to box? Is it to tell that person with a strong, direct voice that like, no, you don't get to speak to me like that? And is it to speak that in that moment? Is it to use your platform to speak up with that sacred rage, with that anger for what you see in the world that really moves you. You know, so there's just ways that we can use energy, and like this is the discernment that just comes over time and time and time and time of like using our energy in really not beneficial ways to ourselves and others.
Yeah.
And reflecting on that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that everything has its place. Like there's a quote, I think it was by Alistair Crowley, and it said a spacesuit in the Sahara Desert is evil.
Yeah.
But a spacesuit in space is good. So I don't think anyone's going to be happy if they're walking around in a spacesuit in the desert.
No. Look, I think one of my favorite, like an anchor word for me in this life is discernment. Gosh, it's a good thing to start to go, what does that mean to me? What is discerning?
Yeah.
You know, like just even like work out what your definition of that word is. I love that. I love like, I went through this obsession last year with asking people their definition of resilience. I was like, because I'd done this study with Dr. Scott Lyons and on somatic stress release therapies, and we did a lot of talk around resilience. And so then I became obsessed after that. Every private client that I had I think it was in 2019, so and early 2020, I'm like, what's resilience? And seriously, I'll just throw a percentage, 90%, 9 out of 10 people's answer would be pushing on through or bouncing back. Like if they defined what is resilience in your life, that was it.
I would see it as like the flexibility of approach. Because I mean, there's no point in going back and doing the same thing if it bounces back.
So flexibility of approach is it. So that flexibility might be, resilience might be reaching out for support. It might be cognitive reframing. It might be faith and trust. It might be coming back to your practices. It might be taking rest. Like this, resilience is how do I adapt to a situation that's challenging my system? And can we have a lot of ways to do that? But it was interesting because how a word's been defined to us by how it's been modeled and suggested and spoken in the world, like it anchors our like belief systems in the definition of that word.
Yeah.
So I think like learning the word discernment is something that we could all do. What does discernment mean to you? What does it mean? Like for me, it means how do I take the massive amount of information flooding through me from the seen and unseen channels into my body? How do I digest that information? How do I know what feels real for me, what feels good from my own behaviors, like from what I take in through social media? How do I digest that information and go, this is a waste product. Time to move that on.
Yeah.
This is useful information, and like discernment about like how to communicate. There's a lot of ways to communicate. I've got to be discerning situation to situation. This is a time for well-placed anger set in, kind, compassionate language, but with the energy of no. But no, that's not space for that. And that just takes a lot of, I've got a tattoo about it. Taking the pause for wisdom to arise. Kashanti, like felt like my practice for life. It's like the pause for that discernment, that pause to go, okay, what's that? What's that moving through my body? What just triggered me then? I mean, like, I'm not saying to like become some like, I'm still got a lot of impulsive I'm a human with a lot of impulsive behaviors, but this is an anchor for me.
And it's useful because it's like a survival response.
Yeah.
Because like I really like the centers, like the 3 centers. There's the emotional, instinctual, and analytical. And the emotional fires first.
Yeah.
An emotional response, and then we have an instinctual response. It's like our survival response. It's like this danger. This might be dangerous.
Yeah.
I need to get myself out of the danger before I even consider it. And then you analyze it and be like, actually, I could have responded better to that.
Absolutely.
But then there's something that almost interrupts going back through it, because like once you get there, a lot of people don't really change their response, and they kind of like, it kind of goes one or two ways. Like once they analyze it, they're like, oh, actually, I could have responded better. I'll backtrack and change that, or even change response. Say you have an argument with a partner or something like that. There's that, oh, I was wrong. I need to come back and change my response to that. Whereas some people are just like, oh no, they just deflect it, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's another whole discussion. And then there can be even like, that risk management system, we'll call it, within the body, which is, I mean, thank goodness we've got it. It's like it saves our lives over and over and over again, whether it's a actual threat to our aliveness, or whether it's a perceived threat to our aliveness, especially when we're young, or whether it's a threat to our, not necessarily our aliveness, but like our true soul expression, let's say. It's just like, I will like cut down where you want to express, which feels like a threat. That risk management system is very important. But of course, we know there's lots of situations in life where that gets due to like, big trauma or an accumulation of very strong and unhealthy experiences in life, not necessarily big trauma, but an accumulation of certain experiences. Like we know that risk management system, unfortunately, can be then switched permanently on. And now because of past experiences, we are responding to small situations from our risk management system where there's no risk. We're just having old things triggered. But this is in the yogic path too. This is spoken to in Tantra. This is part of the stuff that we're healing. This is part of the stuff that we're working with. Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to get to before we forget is what we spoke about yesterday. And it's I guess I'm wanting everyone to define their idea of what the word magic means. And we were chatting a little bit about this yesterday. But because it's just a word for a concept that can't really be explained, because it's something that everyone views quite differently. And the word might spark certain things in some people and spark completely something else in other people. So I'm just interested to, like, what does the word magic bring up for you initially? And I think from knowing me, you know what I mean when I say magic. So let's see, what does the word initially get from your response? And then my view of magic, well, how would you explain that and how that plays out in your life?
Ooh, that's really funny. I knew you were going to ask this question, but I thought you might also ask me to, like, if this was an animal, what animal would it be? Like you said yesterday, and I'm like, oh no, don't like, don't ask me that. Like,
I could also ask that.
Yeah, no, that's all right. We'll stick with the magic question. It's funny because you said that yesterday, and like my response to you was just like, ooh, magic. It's not a word I use.
Yeah.
Like, I don't actually remember saying it very much. I like saying words like, sort of the mystical or the unseen. Like they're the kind of words that I feel I'm speaking to something similar. And I was actually because we spoke about it yesterday, I was thinking about it last night and this morning, not like majorly unpacking it, but I'm like, when I think about magic, like for me in my life, what has that been leading me to? And it's untapped potential. So that's what I kind of like, if we make it really simple. It's untapped potential. Now, I know for me that things that have opened up for me in the last 3 years, actually since I started, or 4 years since I started rebirthing breathwork, I would describe as magic. It's opened up a more direct experience with channels and connections that were previously completely unseen, completely unexperienced, and that I had major skepticism about. So, there's like things that you read, like we only use this much of our brain, and, I read something the other day that like this was cool, the human eye, when we even kind of round the percentage up, takes in 1% of the spectrum of what's around us. So, and I've had experiences where I've definitely picked up on more than 1% of the spectrum, let's just say that. And I've had experiences where suddenly I couldn't give a percentage, but let's even pretend another 5%, 5 times of what it is like opened up, and I'm still not even close. And that's felt magic. And that's even slightly like tested my nervous system, just like going, like cognitive dissonance, just like, well, cannot compute all this information.
So can I ask what kind of situations you're in when this happened?
Like psychedelic experiences, mainly, for me. Yeah. But also, like, after really strong breathwork experiences, like after my second rebirthing, I felt like I opened up another 2 to 3% of the spectrum, but for 2 or 3 weeks, which scared me a little bit driving, especially. I'm just like, everything has a completely different dimension to it when I was looking at it. Like, there was just more depth available to me consistently.
Yeah.
So, so for me, the magic is around untapped potential, around the unseen, around a lot of, for me, things that have just been lost in our culture for a very long time. Yeah?
Cool.
Which in other cultures, like, have been, just a part of their culture, a part of their, like, innate human magic. That there's a lot of things that we can do that has been lost.
I agree.
There's a lot of things that we can do that has been lost. But I think that there's a remembering pretty quickly when we start to put ourselves in certain experiences, or even just open ourselves up to the possibility and start to explore it, and a little bit of trial and error, and just keep on relaxing to that it might take some time to open up those channels again,
Because they are more subtle, hey, and that's why I like the kosher system, because that is a systematic approach. Because, like, how are you supposed to tell someone to, like, sense their energy, and they're like, well, is my energy what I feel? And, like, you can't unravel it and notice the subtleties.
Talk someone into it.
Yeah.
No.
So, that's why I really like
so for me, that's my idea around magic. And, like, to speak to, like, what your idea of magic is, it's probably similar. It's probably similar, but you've probably just got completely different language around it and a different relationship, and probably also, like, from what I know of you, like, just different lineages.
Yeah.
My connection to magic is very primarily still through this yogic lens. It's probably got a little bit around like energy healing has kind of opened me up to a layer of magic. So I've still got kind of like these particular bodies of teaching or sort of history of magic that's probably a way more smaller scope than what you've explored. I know it is.
Yeah, but it's all very similar though, and that's the thing. It's like you said, it's just a different name. Like, you've still done probably a lot of the same types of practices, but you just called it a different thing. Like, even reading Tantra Illuminated, Harisha's book, and towards the end it has all the different rituals that you can do, and it's so similar to ceremonial magic that I've done. It's like the idea, like, how they call in some sort of deity for, like, a certain theme of the ritual, and then call on that, like, invoke that deity's powers, and then you'll have all these movements and things. It's a similar thing to the ceremonial magic that I've practiced for years, and it's just this concept of switching from an everyday mode to, like, a divine mode, and then in that divine mode you just have abilities and ways of being that I guess are more subtle and that affect you in different ways. And I guess, like, you don't want to operate that way all the time, because it's just different modes for different ways of being and living. And if it is affecting every fabric of reality while you're in that mode, you want to make sure that you're focused during that period of time. And humans can't live in that focus mode all the time, because then we can't also enjoy the fruits of, like, what we're doing in the ritual chamber as well. Absolutely.
It's like, just even, like, coming to mind, it's like we're just not limited to these 5 senses. There are all these other very, very subtle ways of interacting with life.
But that's why, like, I as over time I've seen a yoga class like that as ritual, and that's why I like ritual embodiment, because I think that is, like, when people do ritual and they're too heady about it and they don't do it from their body, it's not as potent, or it's not as, I don't know, I'm trying to explain, but you know what I mean. Hey,
absolutely. Like that.
How would you explain the difference?
Well, Look, it's a felt experience of. It's something that's experienced in the body and not just in that prefrontal cortex that just like loves to like go, well, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing the ritual. I'm laying this out. Like even when I like talk to people to set before like a rebirthing session, I've like will often like guide people to intention, you know, before, or just to like a prayer or something that they're anchoring. But I get them to put their hands on their body. And then I go, okay, now think about that thing that you just said. Like, okay, so let's say my intention is to, you know, like open to the new, to knowing things new or knowing things differently. I'm just throwing something out there. Yeah. So rather than just saying it in their head, I'm like, put your hands on your body and like where they intuitively go, and trust even that, that right now, like the part of their body that's speaking to them is where they're potentially going to awaken a felt sensation, an embodied memory or experience of this. And then I'll often lead them to even saying something like like, and then what does this look like in your life? Opening to something new. Is that like, remember a time when you did open to something new and how that felt? And so all of a sudden, it's not just like, this is what I want from my head, but it's like, this is what I knew in my body once.
Yeah.
You know, and this is where like gratitude can be like really connected to, like empathy. Like when we drop from here into a felt experience of what is held in the body, what we've experienced in the body, like this is so different. And then, you know, and again, all of the tantric experiences lead you to not think about mantra. Not to like, but to drop it into the fabric of your being, into the consciousness at the heart, in the pelvic floor.
But first you have to think about it. First, it's all you can think about it when you're doing it.
I mean, that's it. But we all start somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is why it's the systematic approach. This is the ritual part. Like for me, as soon as I hear ritual as well, it's not just something kind of mystical or magical. It's like, it's committed practice. Like I hear the word ritual. For me, ritual is there's something about coming back to it. Coming back to it. Straight away I hear the word ritual and I've got repetition in my head. It's not like a one-off thing. It's like, no, this is my ritual practice. Yeah. So it's not just got that element of the mystical. It's got like the word repetition in it. Like sadhana. This is my practice.
Yeah.
And I keep coming back and I might forget and I might get lost. And then I come back to the ritual that opens me up to magic or grounds me into my body or whatever it is that you're exploring.
It's interesting. The rune that kind of represents ritual is Raido, but it also represents rhythm, repetition, perpetual motion, and this riding as well. So there's so much in that, like how I view it, because the ritual is the vehicle. Like you're riding the ritual, but then you're like riding a bike, right? You can't just, if you've never used a bike before, you're not going to get to the place very efficiently. You're going to be falling over and so, yeah, it all is about, and perpetual motion as well, building up speed, and that's what momentum, and that's what I've noticed when I had a lot of resistance to daily practices for a while, and I was like, it doesn't matter if I do it like every day or I do it here and there, but there is something in the building up momentum that I think is an important part. So, yeah. And it is, like, interesting. I think, like, rebirthing breathwork is a good way to... Because I do have a scientific approach of me as well, where, like, try to replicate the same situation, but yet you get such different results. Like, I could just sit and do the breathing for a couple of hours of rebirthing breathwork, but yet going to your ceremony, your ritual, where you're setting up the space, we're setting intentions, we're, you know, doing cacao, you're doing all these different things that prepare you for the experience. And then the experience is so much more potent, so different to what doing it like by myself or doing it really in other places. So there is something unseen, mystical, magical going on in the preparation of the space and the ritual and everything that happens within it. That, like, the actual scientific part is just you do the same breath work, yet it's such a different experience.
Yeah, I mean, like, that's even, like, you know, even, like, thinking about that word magic, like, I think about how I can be in a rebirthing breathwork and set the space and have a group, and, like, 3 days before, I'm like, wow, I have absolutely no idea what I'm going to talk about. And like what like the theme is. Like it's always going to be the same, but there's always something, there's a thread that I'm going to share. And then often like the last person books or someone pulls out and then another person books, and then suddenly it's like the information all comes through, and I'm like, oh, I absolutely am speaking to rebirthing through the tantric lens, which is what I did the other day. And then I turn up there and like that's all good, and then I'll be standing there and I'm like, there'll be like this force that just says, stand up now and say something about, you know, this right now. And it's like, it's really funny because there's this like the rebel archetype's quite strong in me. And I'll be like, I almost want to like push against that. I'm like, you don't have to. You don't have like, that may not be it, or it's skeptical. Like, and then it's just like, so I'll stand up and I'll like, just like, you know, to the group as they're all breathing, like you're, you know, I'll say something. And then it'll be like at the end, 5 people who come up to me and go, it's like at that point when you said that thing, that was exactly what's going on in my life and what I had to hear or whatever. And like I even attribute like sort of magic and the unseen and those pathways of connectivity and the space of ritual and the openness, like the reciprocity that's happening in that space. You know, like that there's something so magical in that just seems so missing. I just feel like, you know, at least in my upbringing, this wasn't spoken about, you know, like spidey senses, like these extra senses of, be it telepathy or open communication or energies that bring a group together, you know, that, it's really powerful. It's really powerful. And, you know, I don't need to put like, I can't put the words in the why, and I don't want to like, reduce it to just like, oh, it's just this. It's just like, it's incredible. And can we keep opening to receiving messages through the subtle pathways?
I think it has to be that way, like that. Otherwise it wouldn't be what it is. Yeah. Because it's like the thing that moves the air that moves around everything, in between everything. It's the thing that we can't grasp. And if it was the thing that we could grasp, then it wouldn't be the thing. Then something else would be in between that thing and us.
Oh, totally.
You know what I mean?
Like that's the heart of tantric teaching, by the way. Like that's also like in the non-dual, that's kind of like the field. Yeah. Like that's within that field of possibility that's flowing there. It hasn't contracted yet. Yeah. You know?
Like, have you seen that experiment they did where they shot neutrons against a wall? No. We'll have to watch that video afterwards. Okay, cool. Yeah, another time. But they basically, I think it was shot neutrons or protons against a wall, and it was behaving like waves, so it wasn't behaving like matter. So they're like, oh, we want to see how this is behaving like that. And then they put a camera, and then it turned into matter. Yeah. Yeah, and actually turned into particles. And then you took it away. And so when you're not observing it, it's neutral. It's like it hasn't manifested as anything yet. Yeah. But as soon as you turn to look at it, it takes a form.
Interact. Well, consciousness. Yeah. Consciousness, wanting to know itself. Yeah. And be known.
And that's what I've had to make peace with, because I think I need to know everything in the fine details and control. And so I'm trying to do magic or do something or manifest something, and then I'm trying to like watch it happen. And it's almost like getting shy. It's like, dude, I can't go while you watch me. And so I've had to make peace with that and find a way to accept. Yeah. And I'm still working on it. But it's interesting to see your perspective on that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So only had a couple of minutes left. So is there anything else that you would just like to say for, like, I guess anyone who's wanting to delve, like maybe someone who's been practicing yoga and is like feeling that there's something more that they can't explain? Any advice that you'd give them, other than obviously coming in to the House of Mages and doing the Ritual Embodiment yoga teacher training program?
Look, I did a teacher training, like I said, 10, 11 years ago with 25 people, of which only a few teach yoga, but the majority of them, it was a pivotal time in their lives. For most of them, they practice, they share, it opened up new things, it made them contemplate their lives in very new ways. It was huge for me. It was like the biggest pivotal point for me. So I think if there's that call to kind of just dive deeper into the path, Like a teacher training is the way to do it. It's not about just becoming a yoga teacher. And like the funny thing is that there were quite a few people on the course who are definitely going to become yoga teachers, who definitely didn't. And there were quite a few people who definitely weren't, who definitely have.
Yeah.
You know, so not even locking yourself into that idea, I'm not a teacher, I am a teacher. Like, it's amazing when you're passionate about something and you have a lived experience, how suddenly that voice, you know, like emerges and you're like, who am I? I'm like speaking in front of a group all of the time. But really, like, if you're interested in the path of yoga, of contemplation, of energy practices, a yoga teacher training is a way to deepen in. It's actually, it's the way, unless you're lucky enough to live next to an incredible teacher who you can do privates with and ask all the questions to, and who's going to unravel like philosophy and energetics or whatever with you, like the stuff that you get in a training that you do not get in yoga classes. So if you want to go, what does it all mean? What is this yoga thing about? A yoga teacher training is part of the path. Like it just, yeah, cool. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for taking time out for this. And I think it's been meaning to do it for a while. Yeah. And for anyone who's listening or watching, the link to the Ritual Embodiment Yoga Teacher Training Program, the official Yoga Teacher Training Program of the House of Mages, is in the link. Otherwise, you can just go to thehouseofmages.com. Is there any links that you want to drop where people might find more of what you're doing? There'll be like all the links on the House of Mages, but if there's anything that...
Yeah. I'll add my links. But I'm not like huge on the medias, but there's a few little links out there that'll lead you to some of the other stuff that I'm doing outside of just yoga. Yeah.
Cool.
All right, thanks. Thank you. That was really awesome.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, thanks.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Make Yoga Magic Again, the House of Mages podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Cumming, and a massive thank you for listening and for being a part of this. A huge thank you to Nicole for being my guest on this episode. If you're interested in what either of us are doing, you can head to the direct link that's in this podcast episode wherever you're listening. Otherwise, you can just head to thehouseofmages.com and then you'll find everything that we're currently doing. Whether you're interested in learning more about Nicole and what she does, or joining our yoga teacher training program, you can find all of the information at thehouseofmages.com. A massive thank you, and make yoga magic again.